Hey everybody. Today we are going to define woke. Well, actually, we're not going to do that. We're going to go over the very people that like to throw this term out all the time as a reactionary knee jerk buzzword when they really can't even define what it means. Um, I apologize if I'm kind of messy. I partied pretty hard last night in the Bay, and yeah, like just speaking to you right now is making my brain buzz. Anyway, us as leftists need to own our language. Yeah, we are woke. The term comes from the left. It means you are aware of the oppressive nature of capitalism and the history of racism uh, that the United States in particular has developed from and has maintained systemically for decades and decades, and the effects it has on minorities. Not only that, but bigotry. How the right likes to other people, otherize, if that's even a word, and basically look down at and kick down at and blaming the powerless and the poor for the problems of America that the wealthy have created, that the elites have created through their neglect and their greed. Um, it really just all stems from capitalism. So when you're engaging with these right wingers, these conservatives, it's important to go on the offense. Own it. Yeah, you're woke. Now, can you define what that means to you? And they usually can't, because usually what it means to them, oh, if people of color or uh, LGBTQ minorities are being represented in media, that means there's some sort of plot or something. You know, there's some sort of agenda to ham fist the LGBTQ and people of color down your throats, which has never really made sense to me because there's still countless media out there where main protagonists are white men. It really, like, not only that, it just doesn't really make sense because what is the big deal? Like, who fucking cares? The idea that white men are being silenced or persecuted is insanely laughable. Look at who makes up our government, our politicians, our leadership. Look at the biggest role models in media, the biggest stars and whatnot, the past century. You you haven't had more, like, you can't get better representation than that. It's been that way forever. Who cares if it's changing? What effect? Like, it it needs to be hammered into these people's heads. Like, what actual effect is it having on you personally? If they can't answer that, they're broken. They're gone. They're too far gone. They don't understand. So define woke. Why is it a problem? You can look no farther than, like, the Supreme Court. Fund- Fundamentalism. The minority opinion dictating the majority. It's all the right operates on. It's double standards and hypocrisy. They're pointing at these vague ideals and these imagined hypocrisies because it applies perfectly to them. Because if they're in power, look at the Supreme Court, they will dictate based on their own personal fundamental ideals, even if it's not representative of America as a whole, as the polls have shown time and time again. The people are left of center. The government is conservative. This is inarguable if you know anything about ideology, like whatsoever. Not to mention, LGBTQ discrimination is at like an all-time high right now. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of bills right now in various states that are specifically structured and worded just to make life worse for the LGBTQ. A good example, Ron DeSantis in Florida. Florida has just added puberty blockers, hormone therapy, and GRS as not medically necessary to treat gender dysphoria. And this goes for trans adults too. Now, I think about a year ago, there's a study that came out showing that gender reaffirming care for trans youth drastically decreases suicide risk. That is the answer. Transitioning. That is the answer. That is what leads to comfort in their own skin, happiness. But that's the point. The right doesn't want them to be happy. They're sadistic. They see them as a threat because they represent change. They represent like individualism, personal choice more than any mainstream ideology. Conservatism, not even close. Not even libertarianism. You will not hear more individualist rhetoric than from the trans community, the LGBTQ community. Because it really is just being yourself in its purest form, and it's not harming anybody. If someone wants to drastically alter their body, who cares? It's the same thing when it comes to tattoos or piercings. It's the same thing. I said that the right operates on hypocrisy. There's really no reason for this to be happening in any of these states other than unnecessary cruelty towards the LGBTQ. It's nothing more than bigotry. Yet, there always has to be a scapegoat, right? Remember the term cultural Marxism? It's always changing. For conservatives on the right versus leftism, which we'll get to, there is always a changing scapegoat, a changing outrage of the day for the conservative right to be angry at. Nothing about policy. Ever. One day it's cultural Marxism. That used to be known as Judeo-Bolshevism. Or radical, communism. It's always changing. If you notice how you're conservative or anti-left or anti-woke or anti-SJW, whatever, it's always a variety of groups that are responsible for what's wrong with the world. It's the left. It's communism. It's socialism. It's the LGBTQ. It's Black Lives Matter. If you're even more extreme, it's the Jews. Or it's the globalists. It's changed so many times throughout the years. It's the Democrats. But if you're on the left, it's basically always been one thing and one thing only: fascism. I'm going to make a part 2 to this, and we're going to go over fascism a whole lot more. But if you just look at any nameless conservative schmuck that regurgitates the exact same shit that every other conservative pundit does, they're not original. They're all copying one another. But if you actually pin them down, because none of these fuckers ever debate anything, ever, because they're all full of shit. They all be exposed like that. They have no idea what they're saying. They're paid to continue sowing fear and hate and division because it generates money. Just the voting records alone, we're going to go over a couple tweets real quick before we wrap this up. From Dreamleaf. Seriously, what the fuck is wrong with these Republicans voting against supporting human trafficking victims? Are they literally just pro-human trafficking? Yeah, that's a big thing right now. Take a look at what they've been voting on recently. They don't want you to have access to birth control. They don't care about human trafficking victims. They don't even think condoms should be used. They don't even believe in gay marriage. They voted against the codification of it. Many of them did. Exemptions for abortions that are needed for emergencies. They don't care about that either. How many of them are making excuses for minors getting pregnant? Forceful or otherwise. They think it's a blessing. How fucking sick is that? What motivates a person to sink that low, to think so lowly of children, yet they're pro-life? No, they're pro-birth. If being woke means, hey, maybe 10-year-olds shouldn't have babies, then call me woke till you're fucking blue in the face. Another thing they voted against: healthcare for veterans. They're not pro-military. Well, actually, they are pro-military. They're just not pro-veteran. They're pro-war. So while your granddad or uncle is suffering from exposure to burn pits in the Middle East or Agent Orange in Vietnam, good luck. Because Republicans don't believe that they should get care. Conservatives contribute absolutely nothing to the world at all, except for pissing around on the internet, waiting for articles to pop up on their feeds so they can all repeat the same stupid thing together in a comment section or replies like a bunch of mindless drones. Just endlessly tweeting away all day with no substance. I think the funniest thing is when something major happens and conservatives get a little quiet while news is breaking and like you see takes from the left immediately. It takes a minute for conservatives to like actually form an opinion because they don't form their own opinions. They wait for the talking points. Isn't that just straight kooky? It's fucking hilarious. It's also like really fucking sad. Great point here from Merrick. Bless Merrick, she's a fucking queen. Conservatives will say in 30 seconds something it takes 30 minutes to correct. Literally, it's like fractal wrongness in one sentence. Because you literally have to explain so many things to just show them how they're wrong. Combine that with a gutted education system and you'll get a picture of where we're headed. Bingo. Bingo, bingo. Trying to combat misinformation online feels like it's an uphill battle because short clips can sound intuitively correct. But when you step back, you realize it only sounds that way because of what foundational knowledge you've been given about the world. That opens up a bigger problem. We already have a public education system that can't keep up with developments in fields as they happen because things are always changing all the time, obviously. We're learning more things about the world and this and that. That system is often strapped for cash and has to cater to K-12 building basics. Then many are locked out of higher education, and now Republican lawmakers are whitewashing and censoring mostly history in K-12. Yeah. Like what more is this? What more is there to say about that? Conservatives are allergic to learning. They don't want to learn. They don't want to adapt to change. They want things to stay the same because any change threatens their livelihoods. Then again, the more things change, the more they get to fearmonger. That fear generates profit because you're going to have a gullible base of fucking brain porridge drones that'll gobble up every fucking word they say. If it's easier to regurgitate and not have to think about, you have a loyal fan base. And that's why I don't really understand when it comes to conservatives, like, with blind, unquestioning loyalty. Like, how are you free if you can't even think freely? Why do you need to wait until conservative pundits say something before you actually form an opinion on anything? Just to reiterate, the hypocrisy of the right. Mom, Dad, I'm gay. Unsupportive parents. Shun them, push them away. They have the community to fall back on. Yet somehow this is grooming. Remarkable. That's another thing they need to define is groomer, because that's another buzzword that's just out of control right now. Last tweet I'll share with you guys. Conservatism is all about inventing an issue where one doesn't really exist, having an existential crisis over it, and then sinking deeper into psychosis when someone tells you you're being irrational. So I don't know what to do about any of this. All I can offer, all I can suggest is just go on the offense. Challenge these positions. Define woke. Define groomer. Like, what does it mean? And why does it matter so much? To where it's an existential threat. That's the thing. It's all made up. All of it. So they do develop psychosis. They do. Conservatives are deeply paranoid people. incapable of original thought. So this has been going on long enough, but I'll make a follow-up pretty soon. I'm a mess. I'm probably going to go shower. And then we'll go over a little bit about fascism and what it actually means. Because conservatives don't seem to know. They'll ask you to define it, and it's pretty easy to define. It just, there's a lot of characteristics to it. It's a little multifaceted, but there is a definition. We'll talk about that in the next video. Sort of like as a tribute to Beau the Fifth Column, because he kind of woke me up to it. He opened my eyes about it. But figured I'd make my own video about it because I think more people need to know and more people need to understand. So, thank you for watching. If you stuck around this long, please, if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe, like, comment, share this if you could. I have a Cashapp if you feel generous, if you want to donate. It'll help alleviate the stress that I deal with because I'm not able to upload as much because of my 2 jobs. Regardless, I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll see you very soon. Oh, also, one more thing. My Jimmy Dore video, my giant project, turns a year old tomorrow. I'll be sharing that very soon as well. Follow me on Twitter, all that good stuff. Have a good night.